Call the August meeting of the Oneonta Town Board to order. Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Bowers.
Here.
Delcat.
Here.
Holleran.
Here.
Jacob. Here. Wood.
Here. Would you all rise to the pledge of allegiance? Pledge of allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I must say it's rather pleasant to have a bunch of people here. We're not sitting here by ourselves conducting business tonight. So I hope you all have some interest in staying and hearing the rest of what we do. In light of this substantial crowd, and there are a few issues, I know that people are here for different things. I will reserve the right to limit time that people can speak. And I'm going to ask them not to be too repetitive. If you have the same thing to say that your person before you did, please indicate that you agree with that. And first, the speaker that asked us to present tonight is Jody Zakrevsky from Otsego Now, and he is here to answer some questions about what is an application that Otsego Now put in for a consolidated funding application for a grant to potentially build some sort of a decompressor station which would inject natural gas into the area and provide the Oneonta area with extra gas. It is not a compressor station. It's a completely different thing. It is not applied for. A grant has been applied for it, and it will be several months before we know if that grant is even possible to be, if it's approved, and where it would go from there. So, this is Jody Zakrevsky from Otsego Now.
Thank you. First, I wanted to ask for a bunch of information. So
You're going to have to speak up.
Oh,
You know, we got a microphone out front.
I'll try to shout.
It's hard to hear.
A microphone would be better if it's
Here, Jody.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. Back in early January, actually January 5th, we received a request from Empire State Development to submit project sites for what they were calling Project Dumbo. It was a Chinese company looking to start a high-tech manufacturing company in the Northeast. We met all of the requirements for site location, proximities to highway, things along that nature. We sent the referral to NYSEG because they had to identify and document that they could meet their energy costs. And on January 12th, we received a response back, which I'll get in a second, don't worry about it. At the Pony Farm and Corporate Drive location, NYSEG's preliminary evaluation based on peak electric load indicates that it doesn't have enough adequate capacity to serve this load reliably at this site for this specific project and to maintain safe and reliable service to other customers. Regarding natural gas, at the Pony Farm and Corporate Drive location, NYSEG's preliminary evaluation based on peak natural gas load indicated it does not have adequate capacity to serve this load at this site. Major upgrades to our natural gas distribution would be required. So it became obvious to us that it's not just a natural gas issue we have a problem in Otsego County, it's an electric issue as well. And we're trying to identify how to resolve both those issues. We had a meeting with their preliminary people from NYSEG in January 24th, and on January 29th, I sent this letter back to them. We currently have been working with 2 other companies in our Oneonta area, which would result in over 350 jobs, but we are extremely concerned about the lack of available power. In February 2016, New York State Electric and Gas advised the PSC that NYSEG was focused on a plan to replace the existing 25 stretch of the Derider line. And that's the line that goes from Norwich to Oneonta that supplies natural gas. They have been charging increased rates to customers for this upgrade, and now your company has indicated to scrap this plan. So we've been paying for 2 years increased rates for increased supply for gas, and they're now saying that that plan isn't going to happen. They further indicated that the Derider line is now being repaired and rehabilitated instead of replacing it. However, we obtained an internal report that previously stated that the Ryder pipeline repair rehabilitation was not considered a viable alternative to replacement, and we expressed our concern for the lack of safety issues on it. The report also stated that if NYSEG, quote, does not finish the project by 2020, 2 years from now, then the 3,500 customers in Oneonta will not be adequately served. We then, interestingly enough, because some people read our minutes of our meetings that we put out, we were contacted by a group called the Interruptible Supply Focus Group. And that focus group is primarily comprised of Fox Hospital, Shenango Memorial Hospital, Chobani, Carey Bioscience, Lutz Feeds, Norwich Pharmaceutical, which is now called Albergen, and SUNY Oneonta. And apparently they were working on this issue now for 4 years, trying to get NYSEG to upgrade the natural gas here. And they asked if we could sort of form a partnership together on this. In March 14th, we finally got our first meeting with the president of NYSEG. And in fairness to him, he said he's been on the job 8 months now. He's the new president, and he will look into the issue. And amazingly, somewhat true to his word, on May 4th, we had a meeting again with NYSEG in our offices with the president, and they outlined what they thought were the issues. What they clearly stated was that the replacement of the derider line, which was estimated to cost $50 million, is now well over $100 million. And that is not a viable option right now for them to replace in 1 or 2 years. They came up with 4 or 5 different scenarios. One was building a compressor station or a decompressor station. We've had meetings with companies called Four Corners Energy, Renew Energy several times, which is a solar energy company, with SUNY Oneonta and North Pier Energy, which actually is a liquefied gas company. We've met with Revolution Solar, another solar energy, and a number of environmental groups talking about this issue since January. Because, to be honest, I don't have any solutions. I'm dependent on other people telling me what the best solutions are. We know we have an energy problem, whether it's electric or gas. We have a problem in this county. And we don't have a concerted effort, a concerted, comprehensive plan for how to resolve this issue. Now, I've been hired to do economic development. I wasn't hired to do energy planning. So I'm trying to learn as I go along. One of the environmental groups suggested I talk to a gentleman, Lou Alstat. Actually, last week I spent 3 hours with him going over alternative energy and renewable energy. But it's not the type of energy that's available right now to solve heavy usage, major manufacturing that is rely on high temperature heat at the present time. The option came up, and a number of the other interruptible supply companies, such as the hospital, SUNY Oneonta, they've been exploring whether to build their own CNG facility. And we thought that it made sense for us not to build 2 here, 1 here, 1 in Shenango County, 2 in Shenango County, to supplement their gas when it's cold, and to consolidate 1 facility for all of the facilities in 1 location. Now, here's where some of the discrepancies lie in this whole thing. One is we have 1 day a year that economic development organizations can submit grant applications, actually almost everybody in the state, arts groups, parks groups. You have 1 day a year to submit grant applications for funding considerations. If you miss that date at 4 o'clock on this year, I think it was July 27th, you have to wait an entire another year to put together a project. So without all of the answers, without knowing if this is the most correct thing, if we don't even know that the cost estimates are real. We got a cost estimate from NYSEG. One of the reasons we met with some of these organizations was to find out what they would charge us to build a CNG facility. One company said, probably for your needs, you're talking about $1.2 million. NYSEG came back and said that number is low, it's probably 5 million. The last meeting, after our negotiations broke down with them in the end of June, 2 weeks later, we had another meeting with them, and they said, we can do this for $17 million. We don't know where that number came from, but it's the only number we have to stick in an application that has NYSEG's name on it. Do we agree with that number? No, we think it's ridiculous. And we think that what they're asking us at Seagull now to do is to come up with $3.5 million for the project. Because they know we don't have $3.5 million. So we applied for a grant. 2 weeks later, we had 2 weeks' time to submit this grant application. Now, where did some of these estimates came for why we need to build a facility this large? I don't know who to show this to. This is the, I'll start with you guys. This is the Oneonta rail
Show
yard
it to them,
facility.
show it to them.
And
I'll hold it.
I'm left-handed at sports, so. This is the Oneonta rail yard facility. We purchased this, our agency purchased this in the spring of 2017. It is being designed by Delaware Engineering to do a generic environmental impact statement. What they are doing, which they and I got into a disagreement on, but my board said it makes sense that they're doing this, so let's back off on it. They are designing the worst case possible biggest development that could ever occur on that site. It's 1.4 million square feet of facility. And the reason is, if we build anything smaller after it's approved, it's okay. But we can't go back to the planning board if we build something larger. So they've said, and it does make sense, we're going to maximize out the site development on this. Now, if I was that good to develop this within the first 2 or 3 years, or even 10 years, $1.4 million in manufacturing space, I wouldn't be working here. I'd be in Washington. That kind of development, except for tender, when was the last time we had a manufacturing company come here? It's not that easy to build and fill a site this way. But when NYSEG asked, what are your energy demands on this? Because we can't supply you any gas, period, nothing. There is no more to be had. We gave them Delaware Engineering's estimates, and they calculated what the gas would be on that. Between the Oneonta Business Park, or the Pony Farm Park, and we know what the gas needs are for all the interruptible supplies. When you add all that in together, it's a 25% increase in gas capacity that we need. So they designed and fitted a decompressor station to handle that volume. Now, is that realistic? No. And that's part of the reason the cost estimate is ridiculous. The third thing on that whole thing is that we only need compressed gas during the months of late December to usually early February, when the temperatures drop below 15 degrees. It's an average of last winter season, it was 30 days. The year before that, it was 1 week. The year before that, it was 1 week. And the year before that, it was 3 weeks. So it's basically a month time where these 3 days during this week, followed by the next week maybe 2 days, followed by the next week maybe 5 days. Those are the days we need additional gas in the line. It's not 12 months a year. So there begs another question. Why are we spending this much money on a facility that you only need once a month, one month a year? I don't have an answer for that, because I don't think we're going to spend that kind of money. But that's how it was designed. That's where the estimates originally came from. Now, we've asked for detailed cost estimates from NYSEG, and to be honest, NYSEG has not supplied those yet to us. But part of the reason is that they have a huge factor for contingency in this. And the reason they have a huge factor for contingency is NYSEG does not build decompression stations. Other companies build them. So they're going out now trying to bid this. They don't even have specs yet, but they're trying to work on specs to bid this to get a realistic cost estimate. But remember, July 27th already passed. We had to submit a grant application, or we have to wait another year and tell these businesses, hold on, we're working on finding a solution. Now, at the same time, as I indicated, I have a meeting in 2 weeks with Rambo Fuel Energy, the parent company in Norwood, in Binghamton, to talk about what they can do for us besides NYSEG. We're still working with other types of solar energy companies. We still are trying to find other solutions. Now, if we are successful in getting a grant, that would be wonderful. That doesn't mean it's carved in stone. It still has to go through a whole environmental review process, and I could still decide that we want to do something else with that grant and amend it. Where I came from in Amsterdam, there's a company called AGT, Advanced Generating Technologies. They had a $20 million project expansion that they wanted to do. We got them a $3 million grant for their expansion and $1 million for a new electric feed into their facility that they needed to upgrade. Because the estimate we got from National Grid, a different utility company, was a $4 million estimate. After working on that for 8 months, we found another solution with National Grid, and it only cost $700,000. So we had to give the grant back. Ultimately, the company decided that spending another $15 million in their expansion for a balancing machine just didn't make economic sense to them. And we gave the other $3 million back. Just because you get a grant doesn't mean you're going to go ahead with it. It doesn't make sense. And we're still exploring stuff right now. We're still trying to figure out how to make this work. The best thing out of this whole meeting is that I've got people interested in energy, and I need advice. Like I said, I know how to do economic development. I don't know how to build compressor stations, decompressor stations, pipelines. And to be honest, finding somebody who does is not that easy. Even NYSEG has problems coming up with some of these solutions or some of these cost estimates or some of these, how we're going to do it. Now, what I did suggest, instead of building a decompression station at the hospital, instead of building a separate one for the state university, we suggested, why don't we consolidate it all into one facility? So what we suggested, which is not necessarily what NYSEG wants us to do, but what we suggested was we have our Pony Farm Industrial Park. 88 comes right up here. A truck could get off 88 and go 200 feet into our industrial park without going through any residential neighborhoods. And that's what we suggested. And we're willing to give up one of our lots for that purpose, because I don't want to see trucks going all the way into the city of Oneonta to our rail yards. I don't want to see them going up to the college. It just doesn't make sense to have facilities all over the place. So that's why we looked at the Oneonta Business Park. To us, it made sense. You're right off the interstate. You don't drive any further. Now, how many trucks are we talking about? This is another, who knows? Based on what we've been told by 2 other energy companies that build these things, they said you're going to need 2 to 3 trucks a day for probably 2 to 3 weeks. After that, you don't need it because the temperature rises and you have enough gas. During the summer, we have a lot of gas. We're only at 60%. But it's only during those cold winter months that it's the coldest. Now, am I sold on this idea? No. And again, that's why I really respect Mr. Allstat. He's trying to come up with other solutions as well on this whole thing. But that's kind of where we are. If we had another 6 months to submit the grant application, we'd have a better answer for everybody. But we had basically 2 weeks by the time NYSEG finally agreed to give us an estimate, and they actually agreed in writing to finance, whatever it was, the $15 million in financing. Now, everybody, that's another thing that I've heard. Everybody's saying, well, the rates are going to go up when we build this thing. They have been raised our rates for 2 years now, and by the time this thing gets, if it gets built, it'll be another 2 years. They're going to have $30 or $40 million of our taxpayers' monies in their coffers. I'm not going to go before the Public Service Commission and ask them to raise rates for this. They should pay for it out of what they've already taken from us. So I don't suspect, and I will I will personally fight, my agency will, to say no rate increase for this, because they've been charging us already. So that's kind of where we are. I don't know if that,
Jody, I think you've done a good job of explaining the issue. I'm not sure how many people are here to address that one specifically. I will allow some questions. I'd ask questions to be directed to the board, and if they're appropriate, we'll refer them to Mr. Zakrevsky.
I signed a sheet. I was the first on the sheet.
Okay.
If I could speak against this, please.
Sure.
I'd like to make,
We're gonna keep the.
I'd like to make a request that every speaker be limited to 3 minutes.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
no,
we'll
no,
never get through.
I was just about to say that, okay, and,
keep track of the time.
Yep.
Thank you.
I wrote this as 3 minutes and less. Thank you, Lisa Bard, East Street, Oneonta. I really wish that the IDA had taken this proposal to the public before their one day to write their grant to determine our future of corporate and energy use and transportation use and disuse, as it were. On the way over here, I was enjoying the ride, thinking what a great place it must have been to be a kid here. I didn't grow up here. Those of you on the town board who did grow up here, I ask you to do the right thing and say no to this monster decompressor. One of the things we do to children as part of the maturing process is make them doubt their intelligence and morality, and denouncing this proposal at this stage and venue is moral, because they seek the credibility your approval would provide, because the facts are not on their side. You heard the name Arabido. The leather stocking pipeline is going to bring fracked gas to the Constitution pipeline that we already defeated. Okay, and here's Moravido in the middle of all this. Again, thank you for letting us speak in areas where fracking damage occurs. That's not always allowed. I know this firsthand, having successfully sued Montrose, Pennsylvania to stop their rules for press from taking force. They thought they could tell journalists where to stand, what equipment to use, and when they could use it during public meetings in a public building. The idea was to inhibit coverage of local damage from fracking. Not very democratic behavior. Okay, save democracy tonight, town board. These operations are the death rattle of the fossil fuel industry. We don't need them, we cannot afford them, they lie about jobs, what they bring is harm. They block us from exploring and using other energy. Compressors, decompressors, and pipelines means fracking. We cannot afford it, they cost us more than any good they bring. I've attended public hearings in Pennsylvania after toxic release events, fires, in which there was zero contact from the operators to local first responders for over 24 hours. We are told this giant compressor, decompressor, is needed, powered. But if that's the case, let them truck it in and pay for them themselves without further disruption to the environment and people than that posed by existing infrastructure. I've never, in the 18 years I've lived here, heard of SUNY Oneonta having to close down for lack of power or Fox Hospital. Have you? They're just pulling this out of thin air, it seems like. Now, my sister had to evacuate to Oneonta, Pennsylvania after it was destroyed. District Attorney Dan Barrett of Bradford County sees the boomtown headaches up close. Increased assaults of all kinds, child abuse, rape, prostitution. In closing,
I'm sorry.
this proposal is being snuck in during the dog days of summer. Please remember what Winnie the Pooh told Christopher Robin. You're braver than you think. You're smarter than you know. You're stronger than you think.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Hello, town board. I'm not sure who to address in face. I'll try to just go back and forth. My name is William Houston. I am interim acting director of a group called the Stop the Bomb Trucks Coalition. Now, there's some stickers in the room. A lot of people seem to react to the word bomb trucks. And what I want to say is that in this packet that I've given to you today, there should be ample justification for the scientific justification for the use of this term. Because And that, by the way, that's a quote right underneath the photo. That's a quote from the town of Vestal supervisor, John Schaefer. He says, I like to call them bomb trucks. They look like bombs. So, what are we talking here? We're talking here about a brand new thing. This is an innovation. This thing has never before been possible prior to 2012. That's when they were first permitted on U.S. roads. The first terminals were not built until 2013. So just 5 years, that's how long these vehicles have been on the road. These are super high-tech, space-age vehicles. These tanks inside require very high-tech robots to assemble them. It's called, the full name is High Pressure Bulk Haul Type 4 CNG Carbon Fiber Composite Virtual Pipeline Tube Trailers. Now maybe you can see why I like to call them bomb trucks. It's a little bit easier to say. Now, the justification for the term, let me just say this really quick. The justification for the term bomb trucks is each one of these trucks carries a payload of 11 tons of methane. If you have a son or a daughter taking high school physics, take that physics book and look into the back of it, and you can do that conversion. And the conversion is 133 tons of TNT. I'm going to try to run through this. I'm wondering if I could have just an extra minute, because
Sorry, we not yet.
Okay, so there's a regulatory gap. I understand there's a lot of people here, but I am probably the technical expert in the room. I have most information on these vehicles, so I would ask for a little bit more time.
Are you calling out?
Oh.
This is
Okay, very good. So all I'm going to say is that the law is silent on bomb trucks. The regulators derive their authority from the statutes. So if the statutes don't mention these things, and of course they don't because it's brand new, then there are no regulations, and that's what we are finding. We have to close the regulatory gap. We have to fix the hazmat law in New York State. We have to fix clarify the jurisdiction of these trucks,
I appreciate you.
and get them off the road.
Giving us the
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
A quick question. Is there a specific proposed lot in the industrial park for this?
Not at this time.
Not at this time?
Do you want to use the mic?
Need a mic? Hello, my name is Dennis Higgins. I'm a former Oneontan. I live in Otsego now. I want to thank the town board and others who showed up tonight with concerns about area energy. NYSEG and the IDA are proposing something for $17 million. The Mannheim facility, which could probably manage 100 trucks a day, costs $15 million. XNG Trucking gave the IDA a bid for $1.3 million. While these are very different numbers, we must make it clear we don't want this creature, whatever the price tag. The initial discussion has been for gas to satisfy winter shortfalls, but NYSEG has said they would grow this to 25% of current gas supply. That would be 25 trucks a day. It's not a couple of trucks in the winter. There would be loads of traffic, loads of stink, plenty of noise. Vehicles can carry close to 500,000 cubic feet of gas each. Whether the facility would handle 20 trucks a day or 90, it's the wrong direction for Oneonta and for the planet. As Jody Zakrevsky said, what has failed to happen is any rational planning for growth in Oneonta. Most of the time, just 60% of the Oneonta's current pipe capacity gets used. A few days a year, we're short a few percent of gas. No one sits in the cold. 2 or 3 big gas users run diesel, which they don't like because it costs more, so they're driving this. It's essential that the Oneonta citizens, the board, and local energy experts come up with ways to cut energy by 2% or 5%. Big users like SUNY Oneonta, which is pulling 20% from this pipe, need to do their share too. The college's enrollment hasn't changed, but their physical and fossil fuel footprints continue to grow. We're here because rhetoric about renewable energy is not backed by real action, whether it comes from the college or the town, does not cut it. If this project moves forward, local NYSEG ratepayers will finance it, and we don't yet know what its environmental, health, and quality of life impacts will be, but Oneonta residents and people in PA will be paying those. I don't think this facility meets town zoning. Anything not specifically permitted is prohibited. 5-year-old technology could not possibly have a carve-out in the town code. A couple of million cubic feet of gas sitting in a lot seems like gas storage to me. Does the comprehensive plan and town code allow for this facility, for a facility that decompresses gas from 4,000 pounds per square inch into a pipeline? Consider also that a few years from now, NYSEG may want to compress gas from that same pipeline into truck cylinders for distribution from Oneonta. They're not building this for nothing. Would that be okay? Does the local gas law allow for continuous...
30 seconds.
Okay, thank you. The easy answer to energy needs is not always the right answer, and this is frustrating, but we have an opportunity, and I hope the will to do better than this. We need a 21st century solution to our problems. I believe people would step up to help the board pursue an energy-smart solution, and I hope the board is willing to try.
Is there anyone else who wishes to address this issue? Molly? I'll try to get to everyone.
Molly's, is this on?
Yes.
Molly Swain. I live out at the Greater Plains, but I have also been able to travel to many places. I've been to the country of Hungary, which is a lot, just about the size of the area we're covering right now, and they have solar energy. They have fields of solar panels, and we could put seals of solar panels across from the Greater Plains, down in the valley where the old train yards were. There are many fields available where we could put solar energy and get enough to power all the places we're worried about.
Yes.
Marie Hasnell. I used to own the house across from, on River Street, at the end of River Street, across from Corning. And the new owner has told me that the Corning people have approached him and told him that they're planning to put a solar field on their land there. I guess it's a rumor, but maybe you're shaking your head, maybe somebody else has heard about it. And I said to him, oh great, then they can go into our grid and lower our prices here. And he said, no, apparently they're planning to sell it into somebody else's grid. And I'm saying, what? How is the city of Oneonta allowing our city land to be used this way and not taking any benefit from it? So if people are talking about solar, I know it's the city, not the town, but we've got to work together on this. So maybe that's something to explore. They're planning to do it, so hey, why not piggyback it, or not to them. Anyway, for what it's worth.
Is there anyone else?
Ellen. Ellen? Ellen?
Yeah, I can't tell who you're pointing to, so
Okay.
it's hard to tell from back there.
So I'm Ellen Pope with Otsego 2000. I wanted to say, oh, there you are, Jody. Jody came to meet with us in March 1st. Actually, I had to check my calendar. And at the time, we actually did discuss a lot of alternative solutions to natural gas. As you know, we agreed to disagree that this area needs any more natural gas. We proposed that perhaps the colleges and the hospitals should look into retrofitting the buildings, which are from the 60s and 70s and probably extremely wasteful. They should explore geothermal. It's being used successfully by Cornell University and a number of others. And obviously, solar, rooftop solar, there's dual-sided solar panels that really can help to reduce the load that they use. The solar panels, I did learn, are actually more efficient in the winter because the heat of summer actually makes them less efficient. So there are alternatives, and you have been presented with them. I think had this been a proposal to the CFA process for geothermal systems in the town or in the city, you would have this room applauding you. But looking at a 20th century energy source for when we really need to look beyond that and to see what we can do to reduce our demand to begin with, we're not going to need this. I mean, I can guarantee the Chinese company Dumbo, or whatever they're called, is not going to be settling in Oneonta, whether we have the power or not. We don't have the same attributes that Buffalo, we don't have an international airport, we don't have, it's impossible to get people here in the winter, business executives, et cetera. We're not going to attract that kind of company. We need to look at other kinds of manufacturing, small scale, not the heavy polluting industries that require these huge energy demands, and focus on what we can do very well, which is food and beverage and farming and education and medical science. I think it's a pipe dream to think that these huge heavy manufacturing companies are going to come to Oneonta when they never have before, and they're struggling wherever they are now. So I think obviously what we should be looking at are ways to reduce our load through non-polluting sources, and it can be done. It's being done everywhere, all over the world.
Susie Winkler, Burlington, Flats, New York. This is all confusing, right? While that's understandable at this stage in the process, the problem is that no matter what we're told in this process, I'm afraid that we won't be able to believe or depend on it. I've already heard misleading information from the IDA, but what I want to do now is read a statement from Karen Yamboro, who is a resident of Dolgeville and lives in the community where the XNG facility of Mannheim is. I'm going to just try and rip through here, paraphrase areas. It was my experience and the experience of my community who witnessed the manipulation of terms and definitions XNG's attorney used to qualify as a safe company by changing the definition of flammable to not flammable because it wasn't meant to be used as a flammable product. I also witnessed many lies XNG told us because they didn't keep their word. They compared themselves to a quarry from the list of zoning variances. Since none of the variances on the list were open for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, they agreed to close their facility for 2 hours at night. They did this contrary to, and stayed open 24/7, increasing their truck traffic at 8 p.m. at night, all the way through the night, 365 days a year. According to Daryl Wright, a resident who lives across the street and runs a business there, he has to hear the noise of the compressors and the loud, high pitch from time to time, basically every 15 minutes during the methane releases. The beeping from backup trucks and the constant smell of mercaptan, a sign that methane is being leaked. He regrets that he can't be here tonight, and so do I. I urge this board to be responsible for this important decision, to come to Mannheim, to meet with Daryl and Sheep, to hear, smell what is in store for the town if they were to move forward with this project. There are many inconsistencies with the original proposal they now live with. The retention ponds were supposed to be protected by a fence, but they're outside of it now, not protecting the community and the wildlife from the toxic runoff. The lights, which are going to be face down, shine very brightly in the eyes of the people and traffic who pass by. The jobs that were promised to townspeople gave 1 to 2 jobs to locals, and the 150 jobs they bragged would come to the village because of their need for the truck parts and their stopping to eat and shop in our town was a hoax. They'll tell you whatever you want.
Why don't you just hand it out? We can take it and put it in the record. We'd like to put that in the record, please.
Not possible for the community to hear it? Okay. Thank you.
You're sort of on the second part of this, but you're part of it, so I want to.
I want to suggest very strongly that
could you identify yourself?
Peter Gutenberg, South Plymouth, New York, that we need to step back and look at the global situation as well. As you may be aware, there are quite a number of scientists who've been warning us that the huge increase in CO2 has been leading to higher and higher temperatures. The last time, many eons ago, that parts per million, over 400 parts per million existed, sea levels were 60 to 120 feet higher than they are now. So far, the temperature has raised globally a bit over 1 degree, but we're witnessing the really very abrupt, striking climate disruptions from these higher temperatures and higher CO2 levels. The wildfires in California, in Greece, last year was Portugal, the flooding, the hurricanes, the jet stream has been disrupted. There are more loops. We have actually lucked out short term in that we've been experiencing regional cooling, but that won't continue. The jet stream is slowing so much that it's actually breaking up, and we're experiencing long periods of time where the weather just stays the same. So as a result, we're experiencing monsoons in New York State. We're experiencing extremely, all of a sudden this particular year, much higher than usual temperatures. So I suggest that it's the responsibility of these institutions who say they need more gas to retrofit with passive house, zero net energy, deep energy retrofits. 70% of their energy expenditures could be saved. So it's their responsibility to look after their problems. It's not the community's responsibility. Thank you.
We'll have an opportunity for everyone to speak.
Hi, my name is Alicia Pagano. I'm 89 years old, and my family has lived in this county since 1819, on both sides of my family. And when, I want to address you as the town board, because it's your responsibility on behalf of us to support us in all of the best possible ways. That takes a lot of wisdom. And you've been hearing too many of us speak tonight, and you have your own understandings. It seems to me that the efforts that you take today and the decisions you make will affect not only us locally in Oneonta, but farther than that, and for our children, our grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, and beyond. So I'm asking you to employ that wisdom as you make your decisions. It seems from all the knowledge that we can gain so far, we're at a very critical moment in the history of our globe to take care of our Earth. And one of the ways seems to be to move to sustainable energy. And so we're asking you to take any actions that move us in that direction, and please do eliminate the actions that might continue us to be using fracked gas. Thank you very much.
To say that everyone should realize that there is no intended or planned action to be taken tonight at all.
Hi, my name's Colleen Blacklock, and I didn't prepare a speech for you or anything. I just have lots of questions and concerns. I live in Oneonta, and I'm concerned about such a huge decompressor station becoming a compressor station, being infrastructure that could lead to opening the doors to fracking in this area. I don't know what kinds of fumes organic, organic compounds come out of this machine, this factory, and it's right down the street from where I live. I don't want to breathe that stuff. What's that going to do to my property values? What's that going to do to my health, my kids' health, my neighbors' health? So from a backyard perspective, which I think is also important, because that's what we understand and that's where we come from, I want to know what this is going to do to my backyard, and I would like more answers about the intentions, the long-term, the long-term intentions of such a huge project. We've been fighting things in this area for quite a while that were looming, and this looks like another specter looming on the horizon, and I don't like the feel of it at all. Thank you.
You hear me in the back without a mic? Okay. I'm speaking first to the board because we had a very sincere presentation this evening. We need the mic.
Would you like to identify yourself?
Thank you. I compliment the speaker who explained the proposal this evening. I think he's very sincere, and I believe that he is confused over the issue himself. I, however, am not. And I speak with a young lady who spoke just ahead of me, who spoke of the long view. I am a grandfather and a great-grandfather, and I'm more and more taking a long view, and I can wrap up 10,000 words of opinion that I've formed over the last few years in a quick analogy. I hope it's quick enough to get in. I used to smoke. I started sneaking smokes in high school, and I picked it up really in cheap Army cigarettes. And well, within 10 years, I caught on that smoking was killing me. Doctors were telling me that, and things that I read told me that. That was 50 years ago, and I'm still doing all right. You know, I don't think I'd be here if I hadn't quit smoking. I think this whole fracking thing and fossil fuel thing, it can be compared to our smoking. We've got to catch on. My God, people, how many signs, how many temperatures, how many reports from around the world do we need to lay off these fossil fuels? We've got to convert to other forms of energy. They won't be cheap. Good things, life-giving things are not cheap. But I hope this board is as sensible as the Port Crane board was, and you're very careful in your decision. And I don't know how your procedure works, whether you go to a planning board or not. But I could go on, but you get the drift, and I think you can read the tenor of this audience tonight. Thank you. Fred Lampier, Oxford, New York.
Hi, thanks. I'm Irene Weiser. I'm a council member in the town of Caroline, which is in Tompkins County, so it's kind of nice being on this side of the room. And I thank you for having me speak here tonight. I came here because back in 2015, NYSEG told the town of Lansing that they had to go on a gas moratorium, that there could be no more development in the town of Lansing because there was a gas shortage. They proposed to put a pipeline, you guys are going to love this, through the town of Dryden, the town that, along with Cooperstown, put the fracking ban on the map. They proposed to put a pipeline through the town of Dryden to provide gas supply to Lansing. Well, probably comes as no surprise we stood up to say no. Since then, we have engaged with conversations with NYSEG and with the Public Service Commission, and I want to offer up, I don't at all profess to be an expert, but I certainly have learned a whole lot through experience of working with NYSEG and working with the Public Service Commission, my group, Fossil Free Tompkins, and I proposed to the Public Service Commission at the rate hearing, at the rate case, that we didn't want the pipeline. We wanted we made up the language of a non-pipe alternative. They already are doing what they call non-wire alternatives, which is solar and some other kinds of things, batteries and whatnot, to address electric needs. We said we want a non-pipe alternative, and that has created new language at the Public Service Commission, and we've been working closely with them and with NYSEG. I'll be honest, it's not a bed of roses. There's a lot of bumps. It's a brand new thing, but we're moving in that direction, and as a result of our initiating that, Con Ed has now proposed throughout their entire service territory a non-pipe alternative because of the success that we've had in stopping pipelines and because of the recognition that the state is finally waking up to that we can no longer proceed in continuing to use fossil fuels for everything. So I offer up to you that I would be more than happy to talk with you and others in your community. You know, in a lot of ways it's similar. We have not a lot of major economic development. We don't have, major airports or whatnot. We've got colleges, we've got hospitals, they want energy. We're trying to work out how to meet the supply. One of the eye-opening things that happened this winter is the Public Service Commission ordered NYSEG to actually look at and report out what was the actual pressure drop during the cold snap that we had this winter. Guess what? It wasn't nearly as severe as their model had predicted. And so they now said, oh, you don't need compressors after all, and we can just proceed ahead to do energy efficiency to help you guys move forward into the future. One of the really cool things is that the $18 million that was proposed for the pipeline, I don't know yet that all of that $18 million is going to be visited upon our community, but there is a way, since that was part of the plan, and as you noted, already paid in the rate case, we said that money should be visited upon our community in a new way. Yep. And NYSEG is looking to do that with us. So I offer up any support that I can give you, and I'd be happy to do that.
I really appreciate that offer. As I indicated before, I don't know a lot about alternate energy. Mr. Alvarez is trying to educate me on it. The Otsego County Conservation Association, they've been having 3 or 4 meetings now on solar energy with me to indoctrinate me and educate me on that. Anybody that can provide me with alternate solutions, I'm interested in learning about them and trying to make them work. So I appreciate that, and anybody else who has any suggestions, please contact me. Thanks.
Use the grant that you get for the compressor, okay?
I'll recognize someone else, but I would like to just comment that the town is very interested in the alternative energies. We have a limited ability, of course, to require people to use them. But we are very interested, and one of the other things, because several people have noted that Dryden and Cooperstown have passed anti-fracking laws. The town of Oneonta has a very comprehensive anti-fracking law, and we passed it a long time ago, and it doesn't allow any other material. We're very interested in it. So the fact that we're looking at other sources of energy because we recognize we do have a need doesn't mean we aren't interested in alternatives. I'll get you.
Hi, my name is Karen Edelstein. I'm from the town of Lansing, also in Tompkins County, and it was really worth it to drive the hour and a half here to speak on this issue because it's so important to me and so important to not only my community, to your community, and really to the globally. So I just wanted to also remind everybody, if you hadn't known this already, that the NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, has designated Otsego County as a clean energy community. And I really think it's incumbent on this community and this board to support that designation and move forward in a direction that actually celebrates that privilege that the county has been given to have that that title. So really, just to be really brief, there are 21st century issues that we're dealing with, social, environmental, and climate justice issues. And for those issues, we really need and have to have a 21st century solution, which does not include fossil fuels.
Thank you. My name is John Davis. I'm a long-retired Bassett physician. I'm 88 years old. And the lady who's 89, I just thought she was fantastic. I think there was I better be careful what I say here, but anyway. I think there's an obvious, very obvious approach here that doesn't require grants, and it was already mentioned, and that is, Jimmy Carter had the idea. He said, wear extra sweaters. Nobody took him up on it, but I think that these institutions should sit down right now and figure out ways to save energy. And that's rather than trying to dream up something that's going to cost millions. Do that first and see where we can get. It seems to me that would be a huge step in the right direction. And I'm just walking around, I'm from Cooperstown, just walking around Bassett Healthcare in Cooperstown, I can see all kinds of ways where we ought to do better in conserving energy. I can speak, Fox is part of the Bassett network now, of course. I'm assuming they can do the same thing. SUCO, I'm sure these institutions can do much better at conserving. So that's my message. I think they ought to do that. Thank you.
Okay, Teresa's in the back. She wants to. Teresa, you're next.
My name is Teresa Winchester, and I had intended to come here incognito tonight, and here I am, standing here in front of you, going to say something. I do live in the town of Butternuts, and apparently if such a project would go through, this pipeline would run from Norwich through my town. But that's really not why I'm here, because we're all part of Otsego County, and I'm just concerned about this kind of project in general. And I'm embarrassed to admit, and some of you probably know, I've been out of the loop for probably a year. So I had just come to get informed tonight. So I am a little more informed, and I have some questions because what I heard was there was some plan to run a pipeline from Norwich over here to Oneonta, which I suppose would come through Gilbertsville, and that we've been paying for that in taxes for 2 years. And then they say that's not going to happen. So I just want to ask you, does that sound like good planning to you? And would you trust any entity that has done that in the first place? I don't think I would. And now there's this grant going forward for this project, and there was this big hurt. It seems like it is a rogue train that people jumped on, and because you've been pulling figures out of the air and plugging them into a grant application because you had a deadline. And I would have had a lot more respect for this project if you had simply just waited another year until you knew what you were doing. Thank you.
Dave Hutchison, Oneonta. I'm on the environmental board for Oneonta. I'm on CEQA board, housing. Yeah, I'm speaking as a geologist, a retired geologist, and geothermal has been mentioned, and I would love to sit down with you and Delaware Engineering. I am not an expert in geothermal engineering. However, it's beginning to be used in the area. We have a company in the area that put drill holes in geothermal up at Skidmore College, and they're going to go about 0.5% on half of their fuel will be geothermal. Can't think of it. Over Norwich has a new building. They put in geothermal. It's a federal savings and loan, and the president over there said they're delighted with it. There's a school district 10 miles east of here, Delaware School District, that did this about 15 years ago. They have free energy now. So I think it is here most people don't know about geothermal. We could drill a well out the window outside here, go down maybe 30 feet or so, and you're going to get temperatures about 56 degrees. You'd insert a pipe, put a non-toxic fluid in there, bring that temperature into the building here, and you can cool the building tonight. We could be enjoying something in the 56-degree range. Or in the summer, you take 56, in the winter you take 56 degrees, and you can use a heat pump to jack that temperature up 20 degrees. So it's really powerful. This probably is not in the purview of Otsego now, but if we got Suco, Hartwick, Fox, etc., to think about geothermal for their heating, that would be fantastic. Geothermal is not good for heavy industry. If you need to get a lot of boilers going and instant high temperature heat, geothermal is not the answer. But there are many, many places where geothermal could help. And I think I know where your office is, so I will be in there soon. But I really think we need to talk about geothermal.
If we get to it later tonight, the board is tentatively going to approve the design of a new highway garage, and geothermal will be a consideration for that.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Step to the back. Keep, yep.
So a lot of great people already said much of what I was going to say, and I'm not going to repeat those things. My name is Keith Shue. I'm a technical advisor for Otsego 2000. However, tonight I'm speaking here as an individual. I do have some questions about the process. And it's my understanding that there's some confusion or doubt about what authority that the town of Otsego Oneonta has in this. And you know, we did some research, and I wanted to thank you also, Supervisor Wood, for pointing me to the place in the code where I want to thank you for pointing me to the places in the code where these things are talked about. And I want to point out that there is a section of the code, 103-8, that says any uses that are not specifically listed are permitted as not listed as permitted are deemed to be prohibited. And when you look at the industrial district, what you won't find is a description, a listing of gas injection facilities or gas storage facilities or gas distribution facilities as permitted uses. Therefore, that tells me that they're prohibited, which means as they're not as of right, you can't do them. And the only process by which you possibly could is through a variance, basically to say, okay, we're going to let you put something where it doesn't belong. So I want to make sure I'm understanding that right. Because it's going to be important for, I think, the public at large.
In my discussions with the code officer, yes. In my discussions with the code officer, ironically, it is allowed, the sites would be allowed in any of the residential districts because it is a public utility use. However, it would not be allowed in the industrial district at this time. So, I mean, which seems like, as Jody's presented, would be a much more logical placement for it.
So what we're talking about is there will likely be opportunities for public comment on some type of process.
Yes, there will be a process, no matter where they go.
Okay.
And that's if it comes.
That's useful to know. I'd also point out that there are other agencies and entities that are involved in this too. The Public Service Commission, they actually have jurisdiction as well. It's a shared jurisdiction on these matters as it relates to regulating this type of industry.
Can't hear you, Keith.
I'm saying the PSC is also an entity that has jurisdiction in this, and I think it's important to bring them into the equation. I think the PSC actually was instrumental, Irene, in coming up with a solution that we're working with NYSEG and you guys, in a way?
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
we couldn't be there without them because the utility can't do anything without the Public Service Commission's permission.
Okay. And then also the secret process. I'm assuming that that's going to be part of this. Even for this facility in Mannheim, there was a secret process. So, you know, having said that, I guess the only thing I'll add is that this all really calls for the need for genuine planning. On one hand, we're hearing about a stopgap measure to deal with SUNY and Fox, but at the same time, We're talking about a Chinese industry that might be coming in the door. So are we talking about growth, or are we talking about a stopgap measure? I think there's a lot of questions about that. We need to figure out together how we're going to grow and grow in a sustainable way that doesn't rely on fossil fuels.
We're very interested in, we're all very interested in finding out. Anything else? Michael?
Thank you. Michael Stolzer, Oneonta. I just want to pass these over. This, just so you can see, and this is what Keith was just talking about as far as the zoning in Pony Farm. A few things. I'm really discouraged. Really discouraged by the prospect that we're going to try to solve a problem, and in doing so contribute to a much greater problem. I think it's really unwise judgment. I don't remember what I wanted to say, but one of the things was Lou Alstad's name has been brought up a few times, and there was a newspaper article, and I'd heard talk that, oh, he thought this was a good idea. A couple of days later, in case some of you don't know, there was another article, and it was an op-ed that Lou Alstad wrote, saying that he was not at the meeting, and that he did not approve it, and in fact, he said this whole project should be canned. Now, that's not an exact quote, but that's an exact meaning of what he said. So I think it's, for the record, that should be clear to everyone. I'm very concerned about the deceptive measures that the industry has used in the past, the violations that go unchecked, and within the government regulation, in the case of I don't remember which one, Mannheim, where they got a permit to fill trucks and bring them to the end users, and instead turned it into a feed into the line, making it a virtual pipeline, which they were not permitted to do, and the sum total of the penalty was $3,000, which is chump change to companies like that. So I'm distrustful of the entire situation, and I think I really want to plead with you all to really do the due diligence needed. And also, Mr. Zakrevsky is at the IDA meeting. I don't know if you recognize me, but I brought up PACE legislation that was recently passed. This town board, no, 4 of the members on this town board signed a resolution promoting it to the county, and the county in April passed the legislation. This is a measure that would assist with you guys. You have the knowledge and resources, and if you could use those, that would be a great tool to help relieve the burden on the gas use by helping residents and businesses switch their energy sources to renewables. It's a very viable program, and that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, I do want to clarify that too. I mean, the only time I brought up Mr. Alstad's name today was talking about renewable energy and his presentation to me for 2.5 hours on renewable energy and things along that nature. And I agree, there needs to be a long-term solution. I did not want to be, still don't want to be the energy policymaker for the county, but we need a real conservative energy policy on all things. And right now I'm working, like I said, very closely with the Siegel County Conservation Association is pushing me in that direction to come up with a more comprehensive approach to energy in this county.
I'm Catherine O'Donnell, Town of Oneonta resident. I have 3 points, 2 questions. Mr. Zakrevsky, do you know what a decompressor is?
Versus a compressor station? Yeah.
And that should be explained to the public what a decompressor is, because in the literature there's very little discussion of a decompressor, but there's a lot of discussion of a compressor station. And have you looked at the research on compressor stations?
I have, yes.
Okay, then you're aware of the substantial literature that documents the deleterious effects of compressor stations on community health, particularly on the health of elders. Anyone with pre-existing lung conditions, any kind of pulmonary condition, is particularly affected by the emissions that come from compressor stations. So we have a community of elders less than 1/2 mile living from your proposed site. Well, that's why I'm asking you to distinguish the difference between a decompressor and a compressor.
We're not going to allow a lot of exchange between.
I'm just putting it out there. I'm asking you to do the research and to make it clear to the public what a decompressor is and what it does, and what a compressor is and what it does, and distinguish the two. Then finally, you made the case that this system was necessary because the interruptibles, that is SUNY Oneonta and Fox and Let's Feed, experience a month of difficulty in the winter. But if you look at the data from NYSEG itself, from 2015 to 2018, and I urge the board to look at that, the average difficulty days are 3 to 5 days, 3 to 5, when temperature goes below 15 degrees. So if the case is being made, there's a month of difficulty for these 3 institutions, and by the way, they vary. Each institution varies in how much difficulty it experiences, but the mean difficulty days is 3 to 5. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll start my stopwatch here. My name is Gary Kotick. I live on Center Street in Oneonta, right by the park. I'm a member of the Otsego County Board of Representatives. And Jody, we've established that we're not going to be getting that Chinese company. We probably established that we're not going to be getting any heavy equipment or manufacturing companies because, as you said, we haven't done so in many, many years. So I'm not sure why we need a compressor statement if the outlook is that dim. We've also established that the interruptibles never get interrupted, and that in fact they only spend a little bit more for a month every winter. So I'm still not sure why we need the decompressor statement station, because they could use it certainly, but $17 million to save them a few bucks every winter, I'm not sure, and the environmental calamity that it'll create, I'm not sure that's a good idea. I think one of the things we can do is to put the large manufacturing companies on the back burner. We have at least 2, and I'm sure more, whole industries in Otsego County that go begging for workers all the time. If we could train people to work in the hospitality industry and in the public service industry in Springbrook, in ARC Otsego, in Department of Social Services, the hospitality industry, in our hotels and motels and restaurants, where untrained, unexperienced people are being treated like serfs right now. If we could be able to create a training program reaching into the high schools, starting to get kids who are not planning to go to college interested in a career with a career ladder and incentives to move into those industries. And if we had full employment in those industries in Otsego County, we would have a very different economy than we have right now. And I would suggest that it may or may not take $17 million to do that. So another approach. Thank you.
My name is Joanne Gardner. I live in Hartwick, and I just want to reiterate, please, please talk to the people in Mannheim, because I am a victim of what happened there. There are upward of 100 to 160 trucks that drive by my house 24 hours a day. I've had 2 accidents right by my property. In the first rollover last September, happened a half a mile up the road, when school buses with my children. So this is going to affect everybody unless you do your due diligence on this. And also on another note, I'm also a parent of a teenager who's looking at colleges. And I think, I know it's really difficult now with colleges, recruiting people and looking for the best students. Are the best students going to want to go to the college that uses fracked gas? Or are they going to want to go to the college that's innovative and uses renewable resources? Who knows for the kids who want to go to college?
Anyone else wish to address this issue?
Hi, my name is Art Murph, and I'm from Oneonta, last street in the city, West End Avenue. Grew up around here all my life, 1956. Just want to say that I agree with everything that everybody said. I agree with pipelines, compressors, decompressors, whatever you call it. I think the IDA has got a lot of work to do. I don't even think that it should even be existing, in my opinion, because it's a big waste of government or taxpayer monies. And I think that the businesses should leave the business to businesses and let free markets dictate how things happen. And we have to dictate how our environment and everything else is maintained for everybody to live and breathe. I live in West End Avenue, Lutz Feed, the asphalt plant. I smell that stuff all day long, especially right now. When are they going to do air quality testing? So.
I'm getting over a bad case of laryngitis, but I hope you can hear me. I was a teacher for 30 years in the Oneonta City School District at the high school, teaching mostly biology and chemistry. I agree with everything that I've heard tonight, and I would just like to add one thing. It sounds to me like a lot of back homework assignments were not done, and before we proceed, they should get done. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Laura Malloy, and
Louder, please.
oh, sorry. My name is Laura Malloy, and I don't have any formally prepared remarks, but I want to comment to you about 3 things. About the responsibilities of being a board member, about the goals of hospitals and colleges, and about economics. I'm not really qualified to comment about the last thing. I was a board member in Lawrence, in the town of Lawrence, so I can comment about the difficulty of trying to weigh what's best for the community. I know it's not easy. and I can comment about the needs of the colleges and to some extent about health, because I'm trained as a cardiovascular physiologist and I'm a retired biology professor from Harvard. So I have some expertise to comment on those items. And what I would say is this. While you're serving on the board, you get hit with so many problems, and many of them are very proximate problems. But the decisions that you make last long after your term. And sometimes decisions that you make can't be undone. So like others here tonight, I want to say, be very careful in weighing this, because once it's there, even if it goes away, even if it goes out of business, you still are left with a mess to clean up. So be very careful about your long-term plans, and be kind not only to the community, not only to our children and our grandchildren, but be kind to your successors, because they're going to have to handle whatever decision you make as well. Secondly, with respect to the colleges and the hospital, Kate O'Donnell made the remark about respiratory problems. It's also the case that a lot of these materials that inevitably leak from these sources can cause serious cardiovascular problems. So what Kate said is compounded to other health issues as well, and seems to be contraindicated for any institution that has the benefit of the health of the community in mind. Similarly for the colleges, as someone else so eloquently said, it doesn't make any sense for them to be supporting what is retrograde technology rather than forward-looking technology. And then finally, about economics. Please take into account that sometimes an apparent benefit is actually a redistribution. And the redistribution of expenses incurred by the college or by the businesses or by the hospital could be a redistribution to the expenses of individual members within this community, and redistribution to future expenses that are going to have to be figured in the budget of this town. So the money in a grant may look really good because you can get it right away, but in the long run you have to weigh whether or not the cost of doing what the grant expects of you is going to be greater than the money that you get.
Can we ask questions of him?
No.
Would that be possible? No?
You can submit questions to us and we can forward it on, or you can send it
Well,
directly
I'm
to
just curious, who was suing Oneonta said they wanted to build a CNG station? I never heard of it. I'd like to know their name.
I'm one short?
I'll look at it.
Okay.
Hi, Rachel Soper, Oneonta, and sorry guys, I got a little carried away. This is not 3 minutes worth of material. If we could just thumb through really quickly. The first one, I just wanted to give you guys an idea. It's a news article, an announcement by Governor Wolf to tell you guys what an $18 million project looks like. That's the mother station in Forest Lake, Pennsylvania, where these CNG trucks are coming from. Just to give you an idea of the scale of what $17 million, $18 million looks like. Okay, the next one is an article about how XNG basically started running that operation in Forest Lake without an air permit. And they also had noise violations, and so that was a big deal in that county for several months. So I hope you guys will read this on your own time. And so the next one, I got this from someone else just yesterday. It's a mechanics lien. XNG, the company that built the Forest Lake Station and Mannheim, they didn't pay these guys, and so they put a mechanics lien on the mother station in Pennsylvania. So if you want to look at the details of that at some point, I'm just trying to give you guys a sense of how this company operates. I don't want them in my backyard, I'll tell you that much. So the next one is the Mechanicville station. There's just a few stations in the state of New York, as far as I understand, with these CNG trucks. The Mechanicville was a $3.2 million project that is what the newspaper reported that the IDA wants to do an Oneonta. And you can see it's $3.2 million, 2 or 3 trucks. If we go on to the next one, now Bob, yours, I'm sorry, you're still in the beginning. Sorry. So everybody, there's a schematic here, and I gave Bob actually the whole Public Service Commission document, and that was the ruling by the Public Service Commission on the Mechanicville project. And in that project, the Public Service Commission decided that they do have jurisdiction, and this schematic, Bob, I gave you the whole paper, not everybody else.
Oh, okay.
The last
Here's the
page,
schematic.
yes,
Yep.
and it shows you don't have color on yours, sorry.
Yep.
The green line, the green dotted line is where the commission has said that their jurisdiction begins, is where the back of the trucks are. Okay, so they need to be involved in this. If you guys want to go forward, I would guess they're the lead agency, but I'm hoping it's not permitted here based on our code and our gas law. We've all looked at it, and I don't see why it would even be allowed here, but the Public Service Commission does need to be involved unless there's been a more recent decision, and I'm not a lawyer, so. And then the next one is, okay, so this is a report by NYSEG, by the mechanic. This is they're reporting to the Public Service Commission, and basically they're saying that they're planning to do phase 2 of the Mechanicville station, adding more trucks, okay? And then there's the project meeting minutes of the IDA, and I'm not going to go through that, but I just want to point out that in this, I've highlighted sections where you can see that basically the price, they got an XNG quote for $1.3 million, and then an NYSEG estimated $5 million, and then when you go on to the next page of the minutes, they're talking about 15, 17 million. What the hell do they have in store for us here? I am like, really? I spent 2 weeks, I've missed work. I'm pissed. I'm really angry.
I gotta tell you, you're over time.
Oh, God. All right, can I just do one more thing? It's really important. I got the winter supply plan from NYSEG, and I got it for the last 3 years, and it talks about not interruptions, but interruptions included, but system alerts, OFOs, and I put the definition on there because I didn't know what it was, curtailments, which are interruptions. And you'll see that SUNY Oneonta, none of the, for each year, I've given the times, I calculated that for each year, no customers were interrupted 5 or more days prior to the deadline. So SUNY Oneonta has not been interrupted for more than 5 days a year, and this whole project is being rationalized that SUNY doesn't want to pay for backup oil on less than 5 days a year. Well, I feel like there's an agenda here, and I'm very worried. Sorry, Rob.
That's okay.
Anyone else wish to address this issue? We do have several other, I'm sure, fairly complicated issues to deal with. Yes?
Joan Tuberty, Meredith, Delaware County. I just want to emphasize the economic benefit of conservation and retrofitting buildings. And I think that's a direction that we absolutely must be going in, because it's easy to throw money at a bad, dirty solution. I think we need to take the long view and look at the conservation and retrofitting. That's all I have to say.
I just wanted to make a statement that I was disturbed by the lack of public information and the fact that the IDA discussed this with NYSEG, Senator Stewart, the colleges and the hospitals, but never involved the board of the town in which this project is to be situated. In the meeting of the March 22nd minutes of this year, Mr. Armeo explained that the only short-term solution is a CNG station, but this is a, quote, real strategic problem, end quote. And I guess I would urge you to, this is a community that wants to help with alternatives, and there are many, many. And had they been aware of this, they could have presented you with these to help with this grant prior to it being submitted for something that This community does not want, they've been clear for years, they don't want gas infrastructure. And they will help IDA move forward in a sustainable way. They have to be involved, and they have to be informed, and they haven't. So I would really urge the IDA to look to the community for answers to this.
Anyone else?
Yep, I thought this was actually included under our town code as well. I was surprised when I heard about it, because this also, I felt this would fall under the transfer of natural gas. The storage, transfer, and treatment or disposal of natural gas. So I was surprised. I thought we had that covered with our zoning, but apparently this is an exempt project. It's not, it explain.
What do you mean by exempt?
Okay, does it fall under a different category? Because
It does not fall under we banned fracking, if you will, all mining. This has nothing to do with the extraction of gas from Oneonta. So it doesn't fit under that section of the code.
Section 103, if I may, 72.2. The town board of the town of Oneonta finds, declares, and determines that 1, the exploration for natural gas, 2, the extraction of natural gas, and 3, the storage, transfer, treatment, or disposal of natural gas.
That's the purposes, Mike. That's not in the ban itself. The point is that when it comes to the code, you look at the code section, I don't have it in front of me, but it's a semi-public and public utility. It's not, and it was already spoken about, it's not allowable, even so, Mike, even if it was, it's not an allowable use within the industrial district. So even if you want to go with what the code says under 103.72.1, it's not allowed. If you go under what we were just talking about under the industrial zone, it's not allowed. So under either circumstance, it's not allowed. Under both those, you would have to go before your board for a variance.
Okay. I don't have a problem.
Time to own our own utility, to do it ourselves. Have our own town utility, city utility, whatever it is. Hamilton has it.
Why don't you get a committee put it out there to resources? For resources for the community, get a committee to resolve problems and to look into it and research. Well, problems like this.
The problem of a grant for stuff that we don't
A couple
want.
people have volunteered to work with the IDA on that.